So what have we got today? We've got an Anson and Dealey style Old English box lock side by side. It's a Gallyon and Sons. So well, what's wrong with this today, you might say, Paul? Well, it's come in with a loose top rib. Camera 2. I can put that scraper right under there. There's no evidence of it, except if I hang it from its loop, I think this might be a camera 1 situation, and hit it with a non-ferrous hammer, you can hear that very dull ring. It should ring like a bell, which is an indication of the actual the rib coming off. So this is one of those classic dilemmas. Do I desolder the whole rib, clean it all up inside, tin it up, relay the rib? And some of you would say, quite correctly, yes, definitely, that's the only way to do it, that's the proper way. Absolutely. But then all this would need re-bluing, and it would cost about £250. First things first, I need to degrease it. So I'm now hunting around for my degreaser. Okay, this is like trichloroethane type of stuff, non-flammable. You may or may not see that in camera 2. I'm able to push out a bit of rust there. Oh, there's not enough propeller in that. There you go. If you look at my table, which is covered with an aluminium cover, you see particulate rust coming out. That's fine. It's absolutely fine. I want it out. I don't want it in there, because I'm hoping to only lift the front portion of the rib, clean underneath, tin it, and then solder it back on again. Probably I'm going to start putting some heat on. Let's just see. I'll comment on fluxes. Traditional was, I'm not being able to open this now, am I? Rosin. Don't use any of the metal chlorides like the plumbers type stuff, and there's a reason for that. It continues to corrode. I brought it to show you. If I've completely raised the rib completely, I will sometimes use this. It's quite aggressive to tin up, which is clean up all the surfaces. This etches out all the rust. You tin up and then you boil the rib and the barrels to remove all of this, and use some solvent cleaners to get rid of all of it completely. But that's when you've tinned up. If I have time, I'll show you how to tin up steel. This is what you need. So, but rosin, when I get that open, I'll do it off camera. It's a tiny little, it's a rosin flux. It's the same as they use in the hurdy-gurdy and violin world to create that bowing. Oh, any stringed bowed instrument, to be fair. It's rosin. It's the same stuff. But I'm going to have to work out how to get that open now. But we need that to non-corrosive flux, because we're not going to be able to get back in and wash this out. Sometimes there's a hole about here. Sometimes the fore end loop is loose, so we've often got to solder that back on. Quite often I'll do the ribs, leave that off, and wash through the cavity down here, leaving this open, and get rid of all this kind of stuff. But we're going to apply heat just to see if we can lift this front end of the rib. We're not going to do the whole thing. It quite often is really well fixed at the top there, and we want it to stay that way, to be honest with you. So I'll be back in a second. Right, so As you can see, just use the back of a punch just to knock all that into a little powder. That's the rosin. So let's see. I have a selection of solders which we can add if we so choose, and that's one of those do I don't I situations. Got to put some rosin on it, but first I'm going to heat up. I'm going to heat up the barrels a wee bit first. Okay. Fire in the hole. Right, that'll be oil burning off in the barrel. All kinds of things like WD-40 and goodness knows what will be in there. Like I say, this is why you don't want to do this at home, guys. It's starting to get hot. You might see there's a few beads. I don't know if I can get it on camera. Right, you can see it's beading up there. Okay. This gentleman is gonna be lucky, I think. Yeah, he is. He's gonna be a lucky boy. Fortune favours the brave, they say. I think it could be true. Oh, I do love the smell of rosin in the morning. Oh. Right. I turned the torch off because it's just noisy. Sizzling away. Let me just see if I can't strike a bit of this solder in there. No, it's not hot enough. Okay. So I have another solution for this, which is great for penetrating. It's a solder powder. Look at that. Now that will sweat in a nice dollop of solder. Because I've got the right kind of rosin flux, that should tin up now. Ooh. That's my allergies back again. Right, ooh, noxious fumes, yum. Okay, so this is where it gets hot and tricky. You don't want to touch this with your bare hands, and of course the rib itself is expanding because it's entrapped. So it gets a little bit hairy at this point. But we have got solder beads. Yay! So there's a chance that we're going to get this nailed. It looks awful at the moment. Okay. And it gets messy, folks. What can I tell you? So I've just done a little test and it's not 100% yet, and this is the way it goes, I'm afraid. Sometimes you don't always get a winner straight away. Up here, you've got that tuning fork sound, which actually indicates there's actually still a little bit of looseness there. Trying to do it close to the mic. Down here, a dull sound. Up here, okay. So we've got a little bit of cleaning to do, and then probably some remedial work in terms of reheating and getting it to seat. There's plenty of solder in there. Just as a matter of getting it to sit down properly onto there. Otherwise it's a complete rib-off job. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. There you go. So yeah, that's a redo. It may be a full re-rib, which gonna get messy if it is. There we go. Epic fail. This is why I don't want you to do it at home, because you'd end up with a very hot barrels. Yeah, that's not taken at all. So this is like when you're having arthroscopy in the doctors, and they stick a catheter in your arm or in your leg and go, right, I'm going to have a look at your heart, and they go, what? After major theatre now, we're going to have to do open heart surgery. Well, this is the equivalent of that. Massive fail. Do it all again. Big job now. Yikes. Right, so now we've got to absolutely deconstruct and brutalise this weapon. We've got a few interesting things going on here. We've got absolute loads of rosin that's now surplus to requirements, and quite a lot of mess to clean up, because this is an epic fail. Oh no, I've ruined this gentleman's gun. Well, I haven't really. Kind of knew that it was either going to be like this. Oh, ironically, I've got a beautiful tinning on my steel, on the Sheffield steel of my gunsmithing tools, which will clean up. Don't worry about that. I'm not concerned, so neither should you be. Okay, my pry tool of choice is my old trusty Victorian butter knife, Sheffield steel. I'll just put a chamfer on it, and the purpose of that is because when this is red hot, you can't get near it. You need something to get in there and just gently pry that rib off, because this rib will get very hot, and so will the barrels, and you've got to be so careful, because as it gets thicker at this end, camera one, it's a lot of metal to heat up, so you've got to get it, just let it to wick through with the heat. And so you just need something to gently pry it off without actually touching the barrels, which are very hot and skin meltingly hot. And I've got to release this now, so probably we'll run the heat up here, gently applying that until the solder plasticizes in here, and then that will pop off, and then it will more than likely try to curl, because that's what they nearly always do, because the heat is on one side and it tries to bow up and pop and all sorts of things. So this is where a forge would be handy, except everything would fall off. How do I know that? Well, because I did it, didn't I? Right, trying to cut corners. See, this is the difficulty. Is it cutting corners, or is it trying to save the customer money? I don't know. Here we go. Success! Sounds like my bottle's going on my gas torch. There we have it. Just let that cool for a minute. So, method 2. You don't pry the whole rib off, but you get abrasives in there, and you scour and you clean and you scour and you clean up to the point where it ceases to be unsticky or non-soldered. So this is obviously red hot. Very carefully, and just slide that along a little bit more. And oh yeah, there you go. That's the reason why. Right, so camera 2, I'm going to lift this up. Can you see how dirty it is in there? I'm trying to get the light for you. There you go. There's loads of carbon build-up. That's not down to us. That's rust and carbon, all got to be cleaned out. This could well be a full rib removal. It's not a good shot. Let me see. Oh, is that better? Can you get in there and see that? Ah, there you go. It's all black. Everything's black. So there's a load of carbon build-up, and I suspect that's actually rust that I've blacked and turned into magnetite, which is the blacking process you get on barrels. You will see here, I'll point with something that's not burnable. There's still rust here. Obviously the silvering's beautiful there at the end. Rust there. All this black crud, that's magnetite. If I took a magnet to it, it's iron oxide or trioxide. And yeah, you can see underneath that there was some nice tinning going on. I don't know if you can see that tinning. It was working, but unfortunately there's just too much rubbish in there. So let's give it a tap on the table. Camera 2 is going to go mad. There's just a chance I could fix this rib from here onwards. And I've put a machine clamp on the lump so that I can actually offer that up and work. So that's got a counterbalance there. That's what that's for. Anything will do, but that's perfect. And then one of my gun blocks. So I think I'm going to stop and have a cup of tea. Probably get another bottle for this. I prefer these. This isn't a shout out, but the Go System power source is a butane propane mix. It's not MAP gas. I don't want anything that hot. If it's too hot, it'll ruin the gun. So these come from your local hardware stores. In England, there's one called Halfords. I'm not getting paid, but that's where they mostly come from. You can buy them online, obviously. Now, they have a long bottle, which for my purposes doesn't sit steady. That's much better. Sits solidly. And yeah, we've got another one here. So they're a little less volumetrically. I buy them in bulk because I like the squatness, because it means I can get a grip of it. I can control it. It doesn't fall over. Health and safety, etc. And sometimes if I want to, I can place a job, I can place the flame and work the job to it like that. So it comes along, flame dances along the job that way. So once my workshop's fully up and running, I plan to have a little forge placed in there, which probably what is basically a long tube with high alumina homemade concrete mix that has perlite and all sorts of other things in it, and it's a long core and you have jets in it. It's like a barrel. It's effectively a faster way of doing it. This is the rough and ready how to do it if you're stuck. In England I don't recommend you do it. In the UK I don't recommend you do it because licensed gunsmiths exist, but and that you're supposed to take the work to them. Other countries the rules might be different. Certainly if you were stuck in the outback somewhere, miles from anywhere, but you've got a torch and you've got some soldering equipment, you could fix this. Albeit maybe not as nice, but you do need those ribs to hold the barrels together, I promise you. It's all part of the superstructure of the barrel. Keeps the convergence of the barrels. If you can imagine, you have the barrels on a 12 bore are running concurrently like that. Imagine the handles of the lumps of the chambers. Exaggeratedly, they are set like that so that they converge at 30 yards to a single spot. So the ribs perform part of that function in keeping the gun accurate. And if you've ever watched, there's a guy on YouTube. At this point, I'll pop it up at the bottom, about here. Pop, pop. Tabor Flaudermaus or something, I think he's called. He's got some video showing how much a gun flexes while firing on slow-mo. That's awesome. Check his channel out if you're into long distance shooting and rifle shooting, because again, no affiliations. He's just a good content provider. You've got to give credit where it's due. And he's over in the States. Good lad. Okay, I'm going to have a cup of tea, let this cool off, and we'll get back to the next job. So I'm having to get that cup of tea. Typical. Because I started fiddling with this again. I thought, actually, better pop the camera on. I'm actually finding I can loosen this longer than I thought. It gets better or worse, I'm not sure which. Again, very careful the heat you apply. You don't want that bottom rib coming off underneath. There are heat gradients on these ribs. You don't want them all flying off. And there you see it in all its rusty glory. And the barrels are not overly scorched. Done that right. Okay, so I'll show you some close-ups of that in a second. That's an interesting one. That's a hollow rib. That's not how I normally would. I expected to see that. I'd have to draw it for you, but it's like that profile. So that being the top of the rib, and there's a profile cut into the metal to fit. Shows a bit of presence of mind in there. Oh, right, here we go. Still probably too hot to hold, but let me just show you. As it is at the front, I expected that to be all the way along, which is fairly common in 100-year-old guns. They've only done it at the end. That's fine. It's all good. Right, so That's obviously a bit hot to handle, too hot to handle. And so that's why we had an epic fail with the quick and easy dirty gorilla cleaning method. Because it's a bad way, this gun. Right. So I had a bit of a fiddle about off camera because I was having to dump off the camera footage. Taking up all the space. Right. So these are still warm. And I've just put some anti-rust liquid in. You can get it from your local gun shop. Again, I'm not advertising products, so Birchwood Casey Blue and Rust Remover. Be very careful, do not get it on the actual bluing, otherwise you have a massive job to undertake to clean up. As you can see, I think it's the active ingredient is hydrochloric acid, otherwise known as muriatic acid, I think the Americans call it. Oh, I see a bit of weepage there, it's going through the bottom. So there's obviously a bit of an issue there with a little bit of the Okay, so I have just come back from heating up and boiling the barrels, and there was a little weeping out of the bottom rib which allowed that rust cleaner to dribble all over that action. Again, epic fail, can't get any better. So there's obviously a little leak in this rib here just to let water through, but what I've done there, you can see it's all silvery and grey now. Nearly all the rust has been passivated. I may have to do another pass, but it's all sort of silvery in there. It's mostly down to the solder remaining. There's a few more bits of rust I'm going to have to just treat up, but before we go any further, these barrels are still hot. I'll let them cool down, and I'm going to get the bore scope into them. That's the next step. There's no point going any further at this point until we know for sure that there's no damaging the barrels. Okay, so passivated the inside of the rib, passivated the inside of underside of the rib, inside of the barrels sections. So I did check with the bore scope, it was okay. Couldn't get a picture capture for you, so that's a bit annoying. So moving swiftly forward, I've done visual checks down the barrels as well, and it's satisfactory. You know, short of having new barrels, it's quite an old gun. I would class it as satisfactory. Right, so clearly where that was lifting, there's not a lot of solder left. So what we're going to do here, because I've got the luxury of the rib off, I'm going to use the nasty stuff, which I can never remember what it's called. It's a chromium flux. I can remember the chemical name of it. Anyway, we'll be tinning up here and inside and along the edge here. I've got to go and boil this out. I've boiled this out already. Just need to boil out inside the rib. You can see it's silvery and black in colour rather than excessively rusty. I'll expose this to heat with the torch and then I will boil out all the chemicals. That's the way we do it. So I'll probably have another bash at the inside of the rib space as well. I've chipped out a load of nasty crap, and I can see now there's quite a lot of good metal there. Oh, another thing I was going to show you, wasn't it? 2 seconds. Let's get some heat on this beast. I'll do the front end first. Flammable bits out of the way. Right, let's make fire. Hot and stinky that is, and it's not the best I've ever seen either. No good turning it unpunished. In the past, everything's fallen off the table. I've just lifted the whole lot and done them all again. Should have done that, shouldn't I? There you go, bottom rib. Gone. More work. It's okay. There we go, 2 ribs off. Such fun. Now you might have seen what happened there. By adding plenty of solder, it actually acted as a form of flux or temperature dropping agent to enable the solder to melt. I've managed to keep the forend loop in, thankfully, and it's not mobile, and the top bit of rib is fine as well. I'm just going to let that rest for a minute, because now I can get the emery paper in. I need to keep that supporting rod in there, so I managed to reinstate that. That was, you may or may not have seen during the time, it's trying to float out, so I've got that back in. And we're going to go back to the old style steel wire and wedges for this, because it's the only way. Otherwise you'll end up with all kinds of bowing and stuff, and you need the barrels running smoothly and straight. So it's been some time since the last segment. The difficulty post-COVID, in England at least, is sourcing and supply of parts, materials and the like. Had a lot of difficulty finding a decent tin solder to tin up, and then I found an automotive supplier which provides the real deal tinning butter, which has powdered solder in it. So this is probably, for this video at least, the final stage of the kitchen cottage gunsmith, as we've almost completed our off-grid country workshop for the gunsmith. Okay, so that's ribs all clean, struck up and buttered up with tinning butter. The nails are there to hold the ribs in place. So now to melt the solder in. And so we have the silver line of solder all the way down the side of the rib, all the way to the finish. More or less degreased, ready to give a first coat of bluing to disclose any blemishes that I've not spotted, and just see how this old side by side can be improved. So I'll see how I can do that. Right, so you might realise I'm not in the cottage anymore. I'm up on my land in the so-called off-grid solar powered workshop. I've noticed though that some of my LED light, highly efficient, should I say, LED lightings with their natural daylight effects are actually proving to be challenging to the camera. Create a flickering effect in the camera, so daylight only here. There's still a bit of residual rust because this is bare and clean. It will rust on, so we need to get some Well, what do we need to do? What we need to do is get some bluing salts on. I'm just going to do a quick wipe. What I do this for is as a disclosing coat, so I can see what's going on and where I need to pay a bit more attention. So a quick drench with bluing salts. That highlights the silvering quite well there. There's a little bit of acidity in this that will help passivate the rust off the barrels as well. This is not really a proper bluing, which can cost up to 200 quid. This is bluing salts. It's a cold blue. This is effectively. It's not the best. It will show up any blemishes in the steel though, and it does really well, really passivates well as well. Well, they don't actually look too bad already, but it does highlight beautifully the silver solder joint. Oh, I've just knocked the camera. Right, so as you can probably see now, that's highlighting that silver soldering line quite nicely. I'm going to do a little bit of a guerrilla tactic here. Just going to drizzle that in down there, because the lead will blue as well. To give you an idea of how it might look in an almost finished state. Just showing you dirty, easy tricks to make it 100% better than it was before. Now I need to do this in quite a few number of passes, to be fair, to get a really good satisfactory finish on this. Now you might be able to see here there's some grey marks. This is bluing salts used without heat. Yeah, that's going to take some doing there. Look, you see it's got some pretty yucky looking bits there. Just a sort of a flash coat to give you an idea of how it will look when it's been properly blued. A bit more tissue paper. Must say the light's better here, that's for sure. You hear the birds tweeting as well, which is beautiful. Lucky to live in a nice place like this. Just a little drop more. Drizzle that in there. Run down. Like I say, you need to do quite a few passes of this, really, to get a good deep blue. It will be blue, it won't be black. Blacking is quite often a result of caustic bluing with heat involved. You can see this is already improving it, so just do some more of this on a daily basis. It'll be fine. It's taking already. This is just for the soldering video. I will have to do more work on this, without a doubt. It just sort of indicates the first stages of blue. This is a mineral blue. Now ideally I need to boil these to neutralize the acids and prevent any further rust going on. I think I've done that in another video. I showed how the different acids. Oops, I've knocked the camera again. Okay, that's not a finish by any means. It does, however, indicate what it could look like. Back to wobbly cam. Alright, so as you can see close up, you can see mineral deposits, you can see little bits of rusty bits. This is where you have to work it. But focus on the join. The solder join now looks pretty satisfactory. A little bit more here to do. You can see here a bit there, a bit of rust on the rib. It's not by any means done, but they are certainly back together again. They're definitely back together again. So the barrel join is not too bad, such as it is. I just need to clean that face off. So with a little judicious use of some emery paper or a sponge, you just clean off the face of there, like so you'd expect. There's a little drop of little hole here, which I can sweat a little bit of solder into if I wish. Well, there we have it. Just going to continue passing this with some salts. The acids in the salts help the bluing and the passivation of the rust, and it is a rusting process with a few other components in there too. So I'm just going to clean off the excess to see how it looks. As I said, proper bluing would take several days of passes, several passes a day, and a good boil to get rid of the acid and turn the red ferrous oxide into ferric, whatever, Fe3, 4 or whatever it is. I can't remember. Brain's tired. Been one of those days, I'm afraid. So that's it for this video. You get the general picture of how it looks now compared to in bits and rusted. So that's all today, guys. This was a long one because of the inability to source materials that were satisfactory, and it was just an awful job maintaining them together because it was really difficult to get the metal to clean up. We got the tin there in the end. So if you like the content, no matter how terrible the jobs can be sometimes, like and subscribe, guys. Thanks.